Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. I'm Joe and we have Wyatt, and we're going to discuss the difference between movies and films. Let's get into it. All right. So this is a little bit of an abstract idea. For people who don't know, the majority of the population, myself included, tend to use movies and films interchangeably. However, there is discussion and there is thought around the creative world of, can we categorize certain bodies of work as films and others as movies based on preferences, based on, I don't know, maybe biases that culture adds to those terms. So there's been a few videos that I've seen online about this and a few articles, and I actually want to point out one today. The article is done by filmmaker Freedom, and it is called The Difference Between Films and Movies. I'll leave a link in the description for anybody who wants to take a look at that. But he does give about 5 points in that article that is kind of his definition, but at the same time, I very much agree with, and so I thought I would just give my own perspective and my own voice and discussion to his 5 points from that article after I present his thoughts. So, the first concept, the first thought that he brings into it is that there is a difference between films and movies, and he describes them in 5 categories. The first is, a film can be commercial, but it has a larger purpose than just making money. A movie is a commercialized project created for the mass consumption. Its sole purpose is profit. Now, I kind of agree with this. A film does tend to seek profit so it can continue being expanded on, and so the creators can pay themselves, but ultimately it's done from a more artistic ground as opposed to a business-minded ground. Now, as we go through these, I want to just say I don't really have a bias or a certain love for either one. You'll notice most of the films I put in here, I am fans of. I am a fan of.
Yeah, you is a fan.
I is a fan. But I would categorize them differently. For example, The Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix, I would consider a film because it's tackling something bigger than kind of the blockbuster superhero or anti-hero or villain film that we've seen, contrasted heavily with Suicide Squad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Suicide Squad is like fulfilling a very simple purpose, a narrative. Ultimately, it is a money-making grab. You have all of these big-name stars thrown into this montage cast of villains as opposed to a deep psychological experience we see with Joker and what his character goes through. That's just the first point. I heavily agree with that concept, and I think it makes sense, honestly. Let's go to point number 2. A film is characterized by the personalities, beliefs, and artistic ambitions of people making it. A movie is characterized by a string of decisions that will appeal to the target audience. So this is kind of the motivations of what the creators have. If you're a fan of films, if you're a fan of movies and creators and directors, let's just do a quick look at the difference between Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams.
I just wanted to comment real quick
before we
jump into the next thought. I think the point about a film being it's the concepts and beliefs of the artists and the people creating it. A movie is the same thing, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people put their time and effort and creative energy into making something like The Suicide Squad, which has a lot of artistic expression and a lot of different direction. And I think oftentimes, especially with superhero movies nowadays, a lot of the stuff that the directors and the creatives put into it gets cut when the movie is, going through like editorial stuff by producers and things. I mean, there's still people calling for the original cut of Suicide Squad from the director David Ayer.
I think so.
And yeah, just wanted to point that out really quick.
And honestly, there's exceptions to every example I could possibly give. The difference is was the end product geared towards making money or geared towards the artist of the project probably making money, but at the same time trying to give a narrative that is bigger than money. I think trying to tell a story that's bigger than just a business decision.
I think you could even say that the end product is, based on the perception of the audience. Even if you put all that time and effort into making a film, if it turns out to be a movie, if it turns out to kind of be a popcorn flick, right? That's ultimately up to the viewers,
In certain circumstances, I would say there are some. If you're defining it by the rules I'm pulling from Filmmaker Freedom's article, it can't really be argued for certain films, but for most films, it can be argued.
True.
These are the examples that I personally hold to. So when it comes to the creators, I think it also can be defined by the intention of the creators and honestly what they value in their personal life. So as we go back to a director like J.J. Abrams contrasted with Jordan Peele, you would see Jordan Peele's films are very socially driven. There's a message behind every single one.
Yeah.
As opposed to J.J. Abrams who seeks to create a fun, adventurous experience in a lot of his films off of, like, in remakes. We saw him do Star Wars. We saw him do Star Trek. We saw him do some Cloverfield stuff, which I know part of that is his. So, but he's like this high adventure. It's this kind of exciting films that kind of piggyback off of older work that he tries to do his own spin on, or he tries to pay homage to.
He almost makes films solely to be entertainment.
Yeah.
Almost solely to be I don't want to be super negative about Abrams, though I have certain opinions about him. I almost feel like he makes movies to be movies.
Yes.
Right? To be entertainment and to make money. Almost. It doesn't feel like there's something special that he is adding.
Yeah. And in some ways, you can kind of, if you get involved in the industry or you watch enough films or movies or you entertain yourself enough, then you kind of have a gut feeling on which film falls in which category. And that can be very heavily based on the creator or the director's intention behind the film. I want to move to point number 3, and I'll read it here. A film is far more concerned with aesthetic and how movement, light, and sound will emotionally engage and intellectually stimulate the audience. A movie is more concerned with plot and easy answers. The example I want to give is another couple of directors or filmmakers. I want to put up next to each other Quentin Tarantino and Mel Gibson. So Quentin Tarantino has a very specific style we see through his films, but it is very much motivated through story. It's very much him and how the aesthetic is very important to him and how light moves, how sound or lack of sound is used. So the artists, the creators are also paying attention kind of like those specs of the film, whereas a film director or creator like Mel Gibson that we've seen, from The Patriot, or we saw from most recently one of my favorite that he's done is Hacksaw Ridge. It's kind of set up, it's visually awesome, but it's really kind of set up in this formatted Hollywood film standard way. And that's kind of like, it makes the process easier because your crew tend to be familiar with that. The process of production moves along a little quicker because you're not trying to have almost this hyper stylized or hyper artistic, unique view to your film. and you are creating more of a movie. It can be a very incredible story, which I believe Mel Gibson tends to create and direct stories that are incredible. But his filming style is less about the aesthetic and more about what is the plot and how are we progressing on that front. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we also get into the conversation when it comes to the directors of how much do you see them, how much of them do you see in the movie? With Quentin Tarantino, it's almost, his style is so distinctly him that when you turn on one of his movies, you're like, oh yeah, this is Quentin Tarantino, and that's why I'm watching it, right?
I watched Hateful Eight. I started watching The Hateful Eight and didn't realize he directed it, and within 10 minutes I knew it was
10
him.
minutes. But I think we get into negative aspects of that as well, where you can be watching something like Star Trek or Star Wars directed by J.J. Abrams and be like, yeah, I can see J.J. Abrams' fingerprints on this, and that can often be negative. He has some good things where you can be like, oh, yeah, J.J. Abrams, but it's different than Quentin Tarantino's fingerprint.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not always about fingerprints as well. In the film community, in the film, indie film lovers, footprints.
Because of Tarantino. He's a foot guy.
I will say this, a film that a lot of indie filmmakers love is Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. That compositionally and lighting and the way the actors move through the shots and the scenes is so well thought out that that's a great example of aesthetic and movement for a film as opposed to just a movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it also comes down to how the creators see the aesthetic and how they present the story. Not uniqueness for the sake of being unique, but what is important for this story that's going to be different than just the formatted Hollywood film way. The fourth point is a film attempts to convey or explore something larger than itself. A movie is about giving the audience exactly what they want. So I want to use the example American Sniper versus Top Gun Maverick. So American Sniper is a biopic of a Marine, and American Sniper directed by Clint Eastwood starring Bradley Cooper. I consider this a film. I consider it a very emotionally moving story where you might think when it comes to war films, there is action sequences. There is moments of thrilling or intense or frightening situations that actors find themselves in. But the bigger thing that this film is trying to convey is that soldiers a lot of times are messed up after their service. They have struggles with their family life. They fall into depression. And in this true story of American Sniper, this man ends up getting killed by a fellow soldier who was dealing with depression and all kinds of mental illness from PTSD. And it's a very sad story, but it's conveying an homage to soldiers who've lost their life, a respect for their service, and a love for America and their sacrifice. Also bringing awareness to this issue that soldiers deal with. Contrasted heavily with Top Gun Maverick, which I love. I love this movie, but it is not trying to tell a bigger story than just an awesome adventure that these what are they called? These pilots.
Top Gun pilots.
So they have all these fancy nicknames in the films.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there might be called something different, but they're just pilots. These pilots are trying to accomplish this mission that's really difficult for them to accomplish, but they end up, I won't give the end away. However, this is a movie. This is a fun, big movie, contrasted heavily with American Sniper, which is trying to seek out a message or a purpose bigger than just for movies or film's sake. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think, again, just, bringing up the point of audience perception. I think an audience can gather a lot of things from a movie like Top Gun that are going to be inspirational, that are going to make the movie last a long time. Is it an American Sniper like film? I don't think so. Absolutely not. It's a big blockbuster, fun, planes, Tom Cruise movie. But further down the road, the value that people ascribe to the movie will make it, I think, can often turn a blockbuster into a film. You get what I'm saying?
I think so. Yeah. And the interesting thing about you being here is that, as I said at the beginning, this is a bit controversial. This is kind of case by case. I do believe there is a difference between films and movies, and certain bodies of work, in fact, I might say the majority of bodies of work, can be argued either way.
Yeah.
But I think this does lay out a groundwork for people to have a basis of argument.
Yeah, and it's definitely, you can definitely see it no matter where you go. For example, since you're bringing up examples, I don't have pictures for this, but Blade Runner, the original one, that is a film. It is high concept sci-fi, but it's a film, right? It's beautifully shot. Everything is immaculate the way the movie looks. Versus Star Wars, all three of them, which are very much adventure movies. Again, as time goes on, people ascribe a certain value to those movies, and they become extremely beloved by the people who enjoyed them. Yeah. And so is Blade Runner, but you can definitely see the difference between the two.
Absolutely. We have one more point we're going to cover, but before we do that, I want to just ask you, if you're enjoying this video, to go ahead and leave a like, and I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you would. I'd really appreciate you doing that. We want you to stick around. We want to give you as much content as we possibly can that you'll find value that in your entertainment, maybe from subscribing from to this channel. We do all kinds of stuff like reaction to trailers and more commentary and kind of debate education content just like this. So we appreciate you sticking around. Let's get to this final point. This final point says, a film forces the audience to grow in some way, to leave the theater or the couch slightly better humans than when they came in. A movie leaves the audience happy, satisfied, but ultimately unchanged. The examples I thought of that I wanted to give is, this might be heavily debated. Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. I would consider a film.
That's me. I clicked the wrong button.
You're good. I would consider Signs by M. Night Shyamalan a film, contrasted with A Quiet Place. Now you might think, these are similar stories. But if you think back to what Signs is communicating as a story, as what is it challenging about human nature? We're dealing with loss of loved ones. We're dealing with people making mistakes. We're talking about forgiveness for people who's done you wrong. We're covering how to be a father to children when you honestly don't know how to be a father. We're talking about finding faith that you previously chose to disregard because of the hurt that is in your life. All wrapped up in an alien invasion. Contrasted, real quick, with A Quiet Place, which deals with self-sacrifice, great story. Survival, good. Taking care of your family, good. Wrapped up in an alien invasion. But ultimately, for me personally, emotionally, much more impacted by Signs, left with a better perspective, changed, if you will, as opposed to A Quiet Place, which I came away being like, that was a heck of a thrilling film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is definitely one that can be seen as controversial and what the audience takes away, because I would say that A Quiet Place is very much a film.
Okay.
Because of the social commentary of, what it means to be a father or a mother, what it means to be a son and a daughter, and, also the commentary of the way somebody with a disability moves within the world, right, with people around them, and not just in normal situations like we see every day, but in a extremely dangerous situation, and what it takes to take care of them. And if you move further into the story, into the second movie, how they are taking care of you. You know, how the daughter is now trying to defend her brother and her mother and the baby, right? It's just a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you at all. I would say, for me personally, I was more impacted emotionally. I was more changed by Signs than I was A Quiet Place. But it might be different for you, and that's kind of the point. This article really benefited me when I came to learn about it, when I read it, because I'm like, I do believe there's a difference, but this gives me some structure as to what to base it on for me personally. And you might even find commonality amongst friends, family, or even just online creators that you're debating or having conversation with for yourself. And all of this to say, it's kind of defined by you for the most part. The difference between a film and a movie is kind of defined by you. And it's a personal decision. Some, you might get more heavy pushback if you call something a film when it's very clearly a big blockbuster that's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
However, like I've shown you, I love Top Gun Maverick, but I put it in movie category. Movies are not worse than films, and films are not better than movies.
Yeah.
It just comes down to what's the motivation of the creators. How do you view the film? How does it affect you? What is being taught here? And what's the aesthetic of the film? Is it very intentional, or is it more Hollywood formatted?
And I would say very much how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Right? In the moment when you go sit down to watch something, are you wanting to be impacted? Are you going to want to watch, Remember the Titans? You know? Or are you going to want to watch...
Wonderful football film.
What's a comparison?
You pulled out Remember the Titans.
I pulled out Remember the Titans.
There's not any football film that I think doesn't have a crazy amount of heart.
Yeah, football films do tend to be. Or are you going to watch like The Waterboy with Adam Sandler?
True, which is just a comedy.
Which is a comedy. Yeah. It's a movie. It all depends on what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and what you want to feel.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And all that to say, go out, start watching more movies, and watch movies with the idea of like, am I considering this a film or a movie, and why? I hope this was helpful. Remember, subscribe to the channel. We love you.
Oh, wait, hold on.
What?
Don't forget that Patreon, boy.
You know what? We have a Patreon, and we would love your support. We'd love you to hang out with us over there on exclusive and early content. Links in the description. Just select the tier that best fits your content needs. We do reactions exclusively once a week. So go over there, check that out. We also have a podcast you get early. So there's a lot of stuff over there. We'd appreciate it. We love you. And we'll see you in the next video. Toodaloo.